Take a pit stop for all things NASCAR with the Four Tire Change podcast. Here is your host, Dawson Iserlo.
It's the Four Tire Change podcast, ESPN Southwest Louisiana sports station. Dawson Iserlo back with you again. The Daytona 500 is in the books, and we've got a back-to-back champion. Shout out William Byron. He gets it done. Maybe you can thank mostly luck, but you know what? At the end of the day, he put himself in the right spot to win the race. We're going to talk about that and the entire 500, of course, here as we get into our routine of weekly updates. Appreciate all the support we got on the Ross Chastain video last week to start off the new season. Also had some great feedback on the Daytona 500 preview. And now things are rolling. We're going to definitely try and mix up the format a little bit this year, have some more guests in, bring in some new graphical elements, visual elements to the pod. But if you are enjoying what you're seeing, go ahead, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and be with us all year long because we're going to have weekly videos, of course, after each and every race. We'll start things off, of course, with the festivities of the day. And I thought this Daytona 500 had that big race feel. I'm going to come back to that storyline later on a little bit. But, you know, the president's there. I mean, everybody, I think vibes are high. We knew the forecast was going to be a problem. But I think the thought was, and, you know, some of the people I saw said, hey, probably get about 150 miles in. Then we'll see what happens with the weather. Maybe we have to have a delay, come back and finish this thing at nighttime. Instead of 150 miles, we got about 20 miles, and then the rain came with only 8 or 10 laps complete. In some ways, I guess it's better because we didn't feel like the race had all these storylines and building the different elements of it and then have to stop. We kind of just got stopped before we got started. So in a way, I guess that's a little bit better. But we, of course, just can't have a Daytona 500 that truly takes place the way it's supposed to ever, because that is how it goes in NASCAR. I thought, look, and the only thing that's a little tough for me, it's been a while since we've had just a traditional running of the 500, and I think the daytime, you know, I am a NASCAR night race guy. I love the NASCAR night races, but the 500 is something that the nostalgia factor, which for me, the Daytona 500 is a big nostalgia race. It's something that I grew up with, and so a little bit bummed that it ended up taking place at night, but I do think the cars look awesome under the lights, and Daytona has, you know, one of the best light setups in all of the sport. So after that long delay, we come back. Here's a little criticism. I'm not going to be too negative on this pod, I don't think, but why do we come back and run 10 laps under caution and then go back into another caution? Now, I know they didn't think it was going to start raining again, but I just hate we're wasting laps at the 500 like that. Not the biggest deal in the world. There's 200 of them, so maybe we won't feel it, but they go to caution on like lap 8 to ends up being lap 10 after they run a couple caution laps, and then they run 10 caution laps and then pull the cars back down under pit road again. Eventually, whatever, they get back rolling, and this thing got underway. Stage 1 was pretty smooth. I thought it was a smooth, everybody kind of paying attention. It's funny, too, if you watch the ARCA race and you progress on through the weekend, not that you needed a reminder of how much better the Cup Series drivers are and stuff like that, but you definitely got it after all the chaos that was the ARCA race and wrecks every few laps. Same thing in some of the, the Truck Series stuff. The Cup Series race was pretty smooth, and everybody was kind of getting along. You did still see some moves getting made. There's still some element of fuel mileage and fuel savings, which I wish we could, get further away from a little bit. But all things considered, it was a pretty nice stage overall. As far as the broadcast is concerned, I'll get these thoughts out here in the middle, and then we'll kind of go back to the racing. I thought it was okay. I went back and I did a little bit of an experiment. I watched the first 25 minutes of the 2007 Daytona 500 after this race, because I was like, man, I just don't get the same feeling. And I know part of it is personal bias. It's nostalgia from my childhood when I would watch the 500 and it was, this bigger than life deal. Some of those broadcasts I still feel like had elements, and I just think, if it's this commentary team, maybe that's what it is. I don't think Harvick and Boyer have the best chemistry. I just think Larry Mack personally is an all-timer in the booth, and it's frustrating to me that he's not up there. I don't know if it's something that he wanted to do less of. Of course, they go to him a little bit, but he's kind of the technical side crew chief that they bring in every once in a while, as opposed to being a part of the booth full time. They did do more side-by-side commercials, which is awesome. Apparently Fox, from what I heard, went to their advertisers and said, hey, we got to make this happen. We want to show the race even in the breaks, so we're going to do side-by-side while this race is live. So that was nice. There was a stretch, and look, part of it's just when you have a bunch of green flag runs. Sometimes in the 500 or races like this, you'll get 7 wrecks, and that means they can get all their commercials in during cautions. This time there was a lot of green flag running, so they had to mix in a lot of breaks. I don't fully blame them for that, and I'm at least happy that they decided to go ahead and give us the side-by-side for the most part. So that's where we are. You get an incident to start stage 2. You start to thin this field out a little bit. You know, the big one didn't happen until later on. We'll get to that with Ryan Preece again. Just, man, that guy can't catch a break, especially at this place. But you started to see, okay, the urgency's going to be there. The Fords, of course, had speed. Logano catches a huge break with the issue that he had. It looked like his day was done. Then all of a sudden they get it fixed. He gets a couple cautions that kind of fall his way so he doesn't fall off the lead lap. They get that thing, you know, and it's funny. I think the camera shot early on of the debris in the grill was probably what actually ended up being this big problem. And we referenced, you know, they referenced that on the broadcast, and then they maybe kind of forgot about it. They went back to it later. So he had a rocket ship, no doubt. I mean, that car, and first of all, I love the new paint scheme for Logano, but he was able to move up and down the field. We know he probably had the best car out there, right? But as these things tend to happen, he ends up getting caught up in a wreck later on. Maybe partly of his own doing. Certainly Ricky Stenhouse had something to do with it, and it's a block at an ill-timed event. He tries to back out of it, and he gets caught up in a wreck. You have the Ryan Preece wreck as well, man. It's scary, you know, and I know he kind of had some, I would imagine they were a little bit emotional thoughts afterwards that something needs to change. They've made a lot of changes, you know, and they did the entire grass to concrete thing on the backstretch at Daytona. And so, you know, at some point it's like, man, it's hard to imagine. It's hard to plan if you're NASCAR for every different scenario. Think about it. And I thought they did a really good job on the broadcast for this crash specifically with Mike Joy, you know, and even Boyer and Harvick commenting in. It was such a unique set of circumstances for how that Preece car got crunched and then kind of got lifted up, and the way the wind was blowing in, man, it was scary. It's awesome to see Ryan Preece walk away from it. For those who, you know, of course, I'm referencing the wreck when he was in the 41 car years ago that went tumbling over and over and over again, and that was one that really made you fully hold your breath and you know, needed confirmation, like, wait a minute, is he going to be, is there movement in the car, is he okay? And of course, you know, fortunately he was with very minimal injuries. This one again, where he flips and he kind of lands on his wheels and he tumbles once, and then he shoots up into the outside wall. That's what made this crash so tough to watch. It's like, okay, the initial surge, the initial contact, the flip over, it's all scary, and then he lands on his wheels, and you're kind of like, that split second, you're like, okay, it's not as bad as it could have been, and then he slides up the track into the outside wall, and it's like, oh, it's even worse than I thought it was going to be. But these things happen at Daytona, and they're going to, I imagine, take a look at it, take a look at the factors. You know, my dad even had some thoughts like about the flat surface underneath the car, if there's a way for some of that air to flow more. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know, but it was a scary incident, and certainly excited that, you know, to see Ryan Preece be able to walk away, do his interview, like, no, you know, we're going to hold him at the hospital, something like that. It was like, all right, he's good to go, and that was awesome to see. As we go down the stretch run here, you see the run starting to develop. You see a couple of these little, you know, restart incidents, and maybe this car's going to grab the momentum. This one's not. This race ends with so much, and there was so much going on too, where Hamlin comes out front, and it's going to be Hamlin or Cindric, and Hamlin looks like he's made the winning move here. And then I saw the wreck kind of developing, but I thought Hamlin was going to get away. I thought he was going to have a chance to dodge this thing. He doesn't, and then all of a sudden, the Red Sea parts, and who comes out other than the 24 car with all those flames? William Byron's the one who narrowly avoids getting involved in this accident. And I'll tell you what, credit to NASCAR. I know they heard the fans, and they heard the pressure from everyone after the way that the duel ended by calling that caution. I was shocked that they let him race through this thing. Now, you first off had the car get loose in the entrance of 1 and 2, right? And you thought maybe that's going to be it. Great job saving it by Riley Herbst to avoid the caution coming out there. Because, again, the white flag had been taken. That would have been it. But then when you're coming around the corner and this big wreck happens at the end with Hamlin and Cindric and the leaders, I thought they're going to call this thing. They let him race back to the line, which I do think in that situation, like with all the safety in mind, right, it does make sense where you go, all right, these cars that are involved in the wreck, they're involved in the wreck and it's over. That wreck is happening. You're going to get everybody out there. You're going to get personnel to them because all you have to do is finish this lap. So credit letting Reddick and Byron race back to the line. Reddick comes oh so close to stealing this one, but Byron instead gets his second consecutive Daytona 500 victory. He was pretty candid after it. He said, yeah, obviously took a lot of good fortune, but he was up there at the right moment, and he now wins them back-to-back. Huge start to the season for that 2014. We know they're going to try and rack up as many playoff points as possible. It's one of those years where you're wondering, can Byron take the next step? And, it's not like he hasn't been close. He's been close. He's been in championship force before. But maybe this is a huge year for him. I'm not even going to call it a breakout year because I think he's already had that. But can he find a way to become one of the real stars that you expect to be in it every week on Sunday? Maybe this is the start he needed. Shout out to my guy Justin Allgaier, top 10 finish, Junior Motorsports in their debut. Sounds like Dale Jr. wants to go cup racing now. It sounds like this was one of those things that this weekend was the confirmation for him. He sounds all in now moving forward, and that was cool to see. Hopefully Junior Motorsports does get a shot. If it has anything, if my input means anything, which I know it certainly doesn't, I would love to see Justin Allgaier get a full-time shot in the Cup Series with Junior, if that's where he's going to go in the next year or two. But if not, I at least want to see them back at the super speedways, man. That 40 car was pretty good, and Justin did a good job staying out of it. I mentioned Reddick, who gets a second-place finish out of this thing. You get a third for Jimmy Johnson, all things considered, with the 84 car. He wasn't up and around the front very much in this race, but he was at the end, and that's what counts. And shout out to the Shaq Magic paint scheme that they had running with Carvana. That was pretty sweet. And at the end of the day, hey, it's another Daytona 500 in the books. It was a lot of action. I still like the way the Super Speedway package rolls. The only thing that I am not as much a fan of, I love seeing the green flag cycling stops, and it feels like with the stage breaks and all the fuel savings, like I wish we didn't have that. I wish we got to see these guys go all out a little bit more, and then those green flag stops mean even more than they already mean. I love it when you have different groups of cars pitting on their own and then coming together. But all things considered, it was another solid race and a great way to start the season. So that'll do it for this week's episode of the Four Tire Change. Atlanta next week. More of the same, right? This same style of racing. I kind of like how they've stacked these up. In some ways, I wish they were more spread out, but if it's what you're used to, you're going to get another week of it. And so we will see what happens with Atlanta. As far as the Atlanta race is concerned, again, like I said, it's more of this type of racing. I went with Brad Keselowski last week. If I'm picking somebody, I guess I'll learn from what I saw. The Fords were quick. I expect them to be up there again. It was interesting. The Toyotas really struggled to get pushed, so that makes me hesitant to try and think a Toyota's going to win this thing. So I'll go back to the Fords. I was thinking Austin Cindric. I'll go with the more experienced guy who's got a couple more of these under his belt. Give me Ryan Blaney to win in Atlanta, but can't wait. Can't wait for that Atlanta race. It's going to be more of this high-flying action, no doubt about it. So that'll be it for this week's episode of Four Tire Change. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll be back next week with the Atlanta recap. Dawson Iserlo signing out.